I think we all know Bollywood's very own Saif Ali Khan, who's made quite a name for himself in the industry. But not just that, he's a man of great wealth and fortune that traces back to his royal roots and Nawabi lineage. The Patodis have many palaces across India, one of which is situated in Bhopal. Famously called the Patodi Palace, it has 150 rooms and is the very picture of luxury. This property is valued at around 5,000 crores. Which Saif was your dad and you inherited all this property? I mean, I did, but that's why both of us are wrong. Here's why. All the properties and assets belonging to the Patodi Khandan are classified as enemy properties. They fall under the controversial Enemy Property Act and the government has full claim over them. First of all, what do you mean by the term enemy property? To put it simply, the Enemy Property Act 1968 defines the term enemy as any country or its residents who formed external belligerence against India. Basically, these are people who are now living in a country which had a conflict with India at some point of time or the other. Consequently, the properties owned by such people in India are called enemy properties. But why did India have to pass such an act in the first place? When the India-Pakistan wars happened in 1965 and 1971, hundreds and thousands of people migrated from India to Pakistan and vice versa. At that moment, the Indian government took over many properties of people who had migrated to Pakistan and taken up Pakistani nationality. In fact, the same was the fate of the properties whose owners migrated to China after the 1962 Sino-Indian War. Later, in 1968, an act was formed called the Enemy Property Act that exclusively dealt with taking over enemy properties in the country. All such enemy properties acquired by the government are held by the custodian. Who is the custodian? Custodian is appointed by the centre to take care of the enemy properties. This includes preservation, control, sale, disposal and other ways of usage of the enemy property. In Saif's case, his great-grandfather Hamidullah Khan, the Nawab under the British rule, never made a will to any of his properties. Later, some of the descendants migrated to Pakistan, like Saif Ali Khan's great-aunt. Others chose to stay back in India, like Saif's family themselves. Since this property also has Pakistani beneficiaries, it is now termed as enemy property. Another interesting story in this issue is the famous case of the Raja of Mahmudabad, a famous politician during the Pakistan movement. This Raja was not an Indian resident at the time and had multiple connections to Pakistan throughout his lifetime. He had many ancestral properties spread across Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, which were termed as enemy properties. It was a 43-year-old legal battle between the Raja and the government of India. In 2005, the Supreme Court passed a judgment through which the properties were awarded in favor of the Raja, and the court said the following. If the enemy dies, then the property will be transferred through succession, and it will no longer be an enemy property if the successor is a citizen of India. The custodian will not be having any right, interest and title in the property. Only the enemy will be entitled to it. The enemy can sell the property. The law of succession will be applied to the legal heirs of the enemy subject. Based on this judgment, you may wonder why wouldn't Saif Ali Khan's kids inherit their father's properties when he's still residing in India and is very much a citizen of the country. The Parliament in 2017 passed the Enemy Property Amendment and Validation Bill, which amended the initial Enemy Property Act in 1968. To put it mildly, the Act was reformed to make it much more stricter and absolutely uncompromised. It also says that enemy property will continue to be with the custodian even if the enemy ceases to be an enemy. It's as clear as it gets. Once an enemy, the chances of getting back the property are slim to none.
No, God!
With the prior approval of the central government, the custodian can go ahead and dispose of the enemy properties handled by them. Are you wondering how many such enemy properties are there in India? Recently, the central government has identified almost 9,400 enemy properties, worth rupees 1 lakh crores. The highest of these enemy properties are in Uttar Pradesh, which is around 4,991 properties. Second in line is West Bengal, which is 2,735 enemy properties, and 487 enemy properties are situated in Delhi. Among these, 126 properties belong to Chinese residents, and the rest of the properties belong to Pakistani residents. What is the centre doing with these properties? The government also has passed an order to sell enemy properties whose combined value is over 3,000 crore rupees. In fact, these properties are often put in auctions and are disposed of by the custodian. What does this mean for the Patodi kids? This act has got widespread criticism and backlash. It is very much frowned upon for its violation of Article 14 of our Constitution that grants equality before law. If they want to claim the property is rightfully theirs, they will have to move to the High Court. And if they fail to do that, the next option leads to the Supreme Court and finally the President of India. But that's asking for decades of legal battle. What do you think about the Enemy Property Act? Is it fair that Indian citizens are not able to inherit their ancestral property? Is it fair for the government to take away that property? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.